Hello, 5th grade. If you haven't listened to chapters 1 and 2 of Brighty of the Grand Canyon, I would encourage you to go back and listen to that video first because we're jumping into chapter 3 today. All right, so we're trying to see who these kind of people are. Chapter 2 ended off with Brighty was kind of backed up to Jack Irons like he was going to kick him. And Old Timer says, "Reckon he's just a mite jealous about sharing his supper." The old man laughed. "Leastwise, that's what I hope." And then we're starting chapter 3, Blue Flecked Rocks. Here's the picture. It says, when the cakes were richly brown, the old man stacked a plate for Jack Irons and handed him a jug of honey. Then he fanned a single cake in the air to cool and sprinkled it generously with sugar. He smiled sheepishly. "Brighty likes sugar better than honey," he explained. "'Tain't so slobbery." As the trapper watched, Brighty took the rolled pancake from the old man's hand and began chewing rhythmically, thoughtfully. "You two always dine on cakes and honey?" Irons asked. The note of scorn in his voice was lost to Old Timer. "Only when we're celebrating, stranger. And now how about sampling a cup of my coffee? Uncle Jim says it's as black as a thief's heart." Jake Irons glanced up sharply, trying to read the old man's thoughts, but Hezekiah Appleyard was not even looking his way. Irons flashed an ugly grin. "I like my coffee black as that," he retorted. The two men in the burrow finished their supper in silence, while a handful of stars pricked holes in the sky. After a while, the old prospector took a gold watch from his pocket and began winding it with a little gold key. "'Tain't but 7, he said, winding. "I'll pile more wood on the fire, and how about us chinning some before bedding down?" "Much obliged, Old Timer, but soon as the moon shines over the brink, I'm crossing the river and heading up to the south rim. By the way," he asked, making his voice sound casual as possible, "what are you celebrating?" The old man held his tongue, thinking. He picked up a sharp-edged stone and began cleaning Brighty's hooves as though he could clear his thoughts at the same time. He failed to see that the stone he was using for a hoof pick was veined with blue. But Iron's quick eyes caught the telltale color of copper ore. His mind began racing. "Now don't you bother spilling your secrets to me, Old Timer," he wheedled. "It's just like I said, I'm topping out of this black pit and don't figure to come back. Not ever. I'm tired of trapping. Ain't enough beaver in these waters to keep me in food." The old man was only half listening. He was eyeing the lean, hardy body, noticing the sleeve stretched tight over Jack Irons' muscles and his broad fingers with their broken fingernails. "You mean you're done trapping and out of work?" he asked. "That's exactly what I mean. And I ain't one to complain, but tonight's the first square meal I've had in weeks, and when I saw your cozy camp with the critter and all, right away I says to myself, here's a man I can trust." Old Timer looked all around as if to make certain that they were all alone. "If you're really done trapping," he cried, "maybe you could work for me. I need a young muscly feller, 'cause," his voice pitched high as a young boy's, "'cause me and Brighty's found an extraordinary vein of ore." Jack Irons smiled to himself at how neatly his flattery had worked. "Yep," the white head nodded. "With you and me to dig, and Brighty to pack the stuff out, us three can get rich quick. You see, I got a sister with a crippled youngster, and sick folks need lots of money." "Yeah, I know," Irons said sarcastically. "You're just the kind to give the stuff away." Mistaking the mockery for approval, the old man sat down, leaning happily against Brighty. "You'll do, Jack Irons." His eyes were far away and joyous. "You'll do as a partner in the little Mimi mine." For a long moment, the muffled roar of the river filled in the silence, and somewhere down the canyon a coyote howled. "Even by starlight, you'll see how rich the stuff is." Hoisting himself up, the old man moved nearer and nearer and spilled the blue-flecked rocks into greedy, outstretched hands. "Here, study on 'em, feller." Over and over, Irons turned the nuggets in his hand. Then he made a wide circuit around Brighty and fed the fire to better see. "Where'd you find these?" he asked, trying to hide the eagerness in his voice. "Well, friend, me and Brighty was dawdling along, loafing and poking along down close to the Colorado River, when we spied us one of them horny toads. And then Brighty flips this toad over with his little old mealy nose, and underneath, guess what? Without waiting for Irons to guess, the old man went on. There underneath was one of them blue-green rocks. 'Twas only a broken-off lump, but I figured where there's one, there's more. Yeah, like mice. Exactly. And I looks up overhead, and I sees more of this color in an overhanging rock up above, and me and Brighty forgets the horny toad, and I begins a-digging and a-digging. Got so feverish I hardly stopped to eat. If it hadn't been for Brighty bellering at sundown, I'd have starved to death. Jake Irons returned the nuggets and flopped down in the sand on the other side of the fire. Lots of veins look good to begin with, he said, but they pinch off to nothing. Not worth it. You're right, most of 'em does, but not this one, no siree. It got bigger and bigger the further I dug. Only just today I was I certain sure. Come morning, I'll take you in the tunnel and show you. He pointed north. 'Tain't far, just over there a piece. Wait till you see the tree ladder I built up to the tunnel. She swings out a bit over the river, but she's stout enough. Jake Irons plucked at his beard, figuring a way to accept the invitation and seem casual about it. You see, I got a tent big enough for two, he said at last, and it's been a long time since I slept out of the wind. Besides, he added, looking towards the river, it'll be risky trying to cross on that cableway in the dark. Guess I'll stay till morning anyway, but your burro. He hesitated. Does he hug camp all night? Darn tootin' he does, and it makes me mighty proud. Until I chanced on this here copper mine, I had only two things I took pride in. One was my grandpap's old gold watch with the gold key to wind it, and the other's Brighty. Found the little feller running wild along Bright Angel Creek. So you named him Bright Angel, and he's him being so bright, I suppose. Yep, only he weren't no Bright Angel at the time. Great horns, but he was a sight. Some porcupine had made a pincushion out of his face. The old man clapped Brighty's rump. 'Member, fella, if I hadn't come along about then and roped you and pulled out the quills with my pliers, you'd have gone under for sure. Chuckling, the prospector turned now to Jake Irons. Guess he was so hungry and hurted he figured I was his best friend. Irons' eyes avoided Brighty, and he strove to keep the contempt out of his voice. And so he's latched onto you ever since, I take it. The white head nodded. 'Cept for summer times. You see, Irons, he's like a migrator bird. Winters, he lives down here in the canyon where it's warm, and summers, he hightails it up to the north rim where it's cooler. You know, he went on, leaning back against Brighty. 'Twas him that made the trail all the way up to the north rim. And mind you, Irons, that wall is so steep, he couldn't go the short way. He had to zig and zag. It's over 21 miles to the top. The old man stretched his legs and dug his heels in the sand. If he ever decides to top out north instead of south, Brighty here knows the way. Don't forget that. And if he's a mind to, he can pack a pick and a pan as nice as you please. You don't say. Jake's irons glinted in the firelight. But I do say. And what's more, Brighty knows character. If he ever out and kicks a man, there's a man that can't be trusted. Once, when we went to town, Brighty near kicked a barber up over the chandelier. Next I heard about him, that hair cutter fellow was serving time for stealing. The trapper went over to feel his beaver skin, but his mind was listening. Now, on the other hand, Old-Timer went on, take Uncle Jimmy Owen, up on the north rim. Know him, son? Yeah, by hearsay, Irons answered. He's the government lion hunter, ain't he? Yeah, he's the one. Well, Brighty's got good reason to mistrust Uncle Jimmy because he smells to the high heaven of lions, and anybody knows that a donkey hates lions worser than work. But does he hate Uncle Jimmy? Don't he? Indeedy no, he sidles up to him to get his back scratched, and same as he does me. Like I say, Brighty knows a person, whether they're good or not, even if it's wrapped up in lion smell. Why, if I was to die tonight, Uncle Jimmy'd step right into my boots, for as Brighty goes, right into my boots. Iron sharpened his knife blade on a rock, thinking. He hardly heard the next words. You see, Old-Timer was saying, Uncle Jimmy understands, just like I do, that Brighty's a free spirit. Seems like he's got to be free to breathe. The talk petered out, and the fire burned down. Yawning, the two men went into the tent and settled down for the night, the old man on his cot and the young man wrapped in his blanket. Between them, the big gold watch hung from the ridge pole, ticking the minutes away. The next chapter is called Goodbye, Old Timer. Things are about to heat up.